When the clock strikes midnight, the murmurs begin. But this isn't just another spooky story time. It's a bone-chilling blend of shadowy fiction, disturbing true crime, eerie legends, and interviews that just might haunt you. From cursed hallways to the darkest corners of the human psyche, nothing is off the table. And if our voices have found you, it may already be too late. New episodes drop each week. Follow Murmurs at midnight and invite the darkness in.
Welcome back to Murmurs at Midnight, where shadows linger and stories breathe long after the telling. Tonight, we journey into the southern foothills of the Ozarks, where every town holds a ghost that refuses to rest. First, we'll drift across Mountainburg's whispering lake, where the drowned past still calls from beneath the water. Then, we'll step inside Winslow's tunnel under the mountain, a place where the dead keep digging and the living sometimes vanish. After that, we'll ride the lonely highway through Mulberry, where the phantom preacher twists Scripture into curses for the souls he craves. And finally, we'll stand upon Spadra Bluff at Clarksville, where a lost girl waits by the river, calling others to join her in the current. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, unlock deeper shadows by subscribing to the Spooky tier. And no matter where you listen, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, follow, like, share, and spread the word. Because every whisper shared keeps these tales alive. Now, keep your light low and your heart steady. The foothills are calling. Story 1, Mountainburg, the Whispering Lake. The water hides what the mountains remember. Folks in Mountainburg will tell you Lake Fort Smith is a pretty spot. Clean, quiet, framed by ridges like folded arms. But before the dam swallowed the valley, there were homes down there. Barns, gardens, orchards, lives buried beneath water. And some say not all of those lives rest easy. They talk about a woman named Eliza Harper. Her husband went hunting in the Boston Mountains in the fall of 1932 and never returned. Some claimed bootleggers took him. Others swore the mountains swallowed him whole. Eliza never stopped waiting. Neighbors found her walking the valley at night, calling his name until her voice cracked like breaking glass. One winter evening, she tied a stone to her waist and stepped into the river that would one day flood the valley. When the dam rose years later and Lake Fort Smith filled, they say her spirit rose with it. Campers swear they hear her voice at night, soft at first, then carried across the water like wind through pine needles. Fishermen talk about lines going taut as if snagged on something heavy, only to reel in strands of dark, wet hair. Scuba divers in training claim hands tug at their regulators, pulling them down, deeper, deeper. Rangers tell folks not to swim after dark, not for safety, but for silence. Because if Eliza mistakes you for her husband, she may take you down to see what lies beneath the water, where the chimneys still stand and orchard trees twist like skeleton fingers in the dark. And if you listen real still, you might hear her whisper your name instead. Story 2, Winslow, the Tunnel Under the Mountain. Winslow, Arkansas, rests high in the Boston Mountains, where the Frisco Railroad once thundered through. The town clung to its tunnel like a vein carved into stone. Workers dug it by hand in the 1890s, blasting rock with black powder, timbering the walls. Not all of them walked out. Collapses buried men alive, and with no way to recover them, their bodies remained sealed in the mountain. After the last train rattled through, locals claimed to see lantern lights flicker inside when no worker remained. A sound like picks striking stone echoed where only wind should travel. In the 1970s, teenagers turned the tunnel into a dare. Walk through at midnight, they said, and you'll hear the dead men working. But one summer night, they found more than a ghost. A drifter's body was discovered, stabbed, left to rot in the damp air. His killer was never found. Some say the mountain claimed him as payment for disturbing its rest. Since then, travelers describe the air inside the tunnel as heavy, copper and iron, blood and rust. Drivers cut their headlights low as they pass through, swearing they glimpse a figure at the far end, lanterns swinging slow. If you stop and call out, you'll hear nothing back. But if you keep walking, you may hear a shovel scrape just behind you. Never close, never far. The mountain still remembers, and it wants you to join the men sealed inside. Story 3. Mulberry, the Phantom Preacher. Mulberry sits low where the mountains meet the valley, a town crossed by Highway 64. In the early 1900s, circuit-riding preachers thundered fire and brimstone through sawdust chapels. One was Reverend Elias Moore. But Elias carried a hunger for the daughters of his flock. When fathers found out, they chased him with guns and ropes. He vanished one stormy night in 1911, never seen again. But the road remembers. Truckers say that on lonely nights, a gaunt man in a long coat will stand by the shoulder, Bible in hand, waving for them to stop. His face is pale, his eyes black pits. If you stop, he disappears. If you drive on, you may hear him in the back seat, reading scripture in a low, bitter voice, twisting the words into curses. I walk through the valley of the shadow, he says, but the words come out wrong, bent and hateful. Drivers find claw marks on their dashboards, Bibles thrown open on their seats, though they never carried one. Old-timers say if you see 'em, honk and drive on. Never stop, because the phantom preacher doesn't want to save you. He wants to claim your soul for the sermon he never finished. Story 4. Clarksville, the girl from Spadra Bluff. Spadra Bluff rises above the river at Clarksville, a place where ancient camps once stood and riverboats tied off in the 1800s. In 1886, a packet boat capsized nearby. Passengers were thrown into the water, many saved, but a young girl, no more than 12, vanished into the current. Her body was never found. Since then, the bluff has carried her shadow. Splash, then faint child's giggle fading into silence. Fishermen tell of a dripping wet girl in old clothes, standing barefoot on the rocks. She stares at the water as if waiting to be called home. Step too close, and she vanishes. In the 1990s, a hunter swore she followed him through the woods, her bare feet silent on the leaves. By dawn, he found small, wet footprints circling his tent. Another man claims she spoke his name in a child's voice, though he had never told it to anyone in Clarksville. Some believe she isn't lost at all. They say she leads the living back to the river, down into the current where she waits. And if you follow, you won't be seen again. The river keeps its children, and it's always hungry for more. The Foothills have spoken. Tonight, you heard of Eliza Hopper at Mountain Berg's Whispering Lake, still waiting in the depths. You walked through Winslow's tunnel, where shovels scrape stone for eternity. You passed by Mulberry's phantom preacher, whose sermon seeks not salvation, but souls. And you glimpsed Clarksville's lost girl of Spadra Bluff, still dripping, still calling from the river's edge. If these stories unsettled your rest, keep the murmurs alive. Subscribe to the Spooky tier on Apple Podcasts and join us again in the dark. Follow, like, share, and subscribe on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Because the more ears that listen, the louder the midnight grows. Until next time, keep your lantern lit, your windows locked, and your name unspoken in the dark.